A rare big earthquake just did strike Australia today, and hello to all my Australian viewers that have alerted me in the comments that you felt it, that it was shaking massively, and that this is an area where you usually do not have earthquakes, so you're not used to being shaken like that. So August 16th, magnitude 5.6 earthquake has rattled Queensland with its epicenter in Kilkivan, just east of Morgan, about 250 to 260 kilometers north of Brisbane, roughly 200 miles. So this is one of the largest quakes that hit this region in decades, and people felt it over hundreds of miles. And again, I was looking at my comments about the Berry Arm landslide video. I was reading comments, and then all of a sudden it was like earthquake, earthquake, earthquake. We felt it. Australia, Australia, all my Australian viewers. So I thought, I was just working on an update about the Tracy Arm landslide with stunning new pictures, graphics, and we can even hear the landslide. But I have interrupted editing this video now to talk to you about that. I mean, I'm sorry to my viewers that we have to talk about your country, about my Australian viewers, that we have to talk about your country in regards to an earthquake. I mean, I'd love to talk about more positive things, but the event, what happened? According to Geoscience Australia, the quake struck at a shallow depth. Right now they're saying 2 to 10 kilometers. We will have to see if that adjusts. So roughly something like between a mile and 7 miles. And of course, if it's shallow, that makes the shaking much stronger, and therefore it is felt by more people. Shallow earthquakes pack a punch, and this one was no exception. That's why there were immediately after that so many reports. Some people needed a little bit of time to figure out, hey, what's going on? What is this? Is this an earthquake? Because in many parts of Australia, earthquakes are more of a common occurrence. So people are like, another earthquake.
And then all of a sudden, the house just started absolutely shaking and jolting. It's like nothing I've ever felt before. And yeah, we kind of started second guessing ourselves, and we were running around thinking, was that an earthquake or not? And then the calls and texts started coming from people who had heard that an earthquake had hit. So we kind of realized it was in fact an earthquake.
The tremors were felt across a huge area from Rockhampton in the north all the way down to northern South Wales. And then minutes after, thousands of residents rushed online to describe their experience, and also filing official reports. Like people described, the whole house was shaking, windows were rattling, my bookshelves were shaking, household items were moving across tables and shelves. So that impact across Queensland had real consequences. Around 11,000 homes lost power in regions such as South Burnett, the Fraser Coast, Morgan, and Burham Heads. Phone lines went down in Morgan. The Queensland Rail and Translink, they slowed down trains because they were worried that trains might derail. So they have slowed them down across their whole network. That was leading to delays of many trains, 15 to 30 minutes, especially lanes that were going into Brisbane and on the Gold Coast routes. So we can say that this earthquake was big enough that it has disrupted services and infrastructure across the state. They were briefly disrupted, but no long-term breakdowns, thankfully, are expected. So far, officials report no serious damages or major structural damage, no serious injuries, thankfully. And that is remarkable given that the earthquake was in the magnitude 5.5 to 6 range. These earthquakes are usually, and especially if they're shallow, they're capable of causing at least minor cracks and visible damage to weaker buildings if there's an area that has not really structurally well-built houses, they collapse. We've recently seen it in other areas of the world. I have reported about this in Turkey, for example, or in Papua. So the authorities have quickly confirmed, and that's a good thing because we've had quite a few of these in the last few days, that there was no tsunami risk since this was an inland quake. The epicenter was too far inland to cause any tsunami. But of course, many people were frightened. For some, it was the strongest shaking that they have ever felt in their lifetime. And I could hear that in your comments when you wrote me. I could hear that you had fear and that you were very surprised. Because these big earthquakes in Queensland are very rare. The last quake of this size, that's over 80 years ago, or I have to say quakes in plural. In 1918, we had a magnitude 6.3. In Gladstone in 1935, magnitude 6.1 near Gayndah. But probably, I mean, maybe your grandparents lived through that, right? But right now, it's many people never felt anything like that. So that can be really scary. Since then, yeah, there have been many small tremors, but nothing comparable, nothing as close as what today's event was. And in fact, Geoscience Australia has noted that this is the first earthquake of magnitude 1.5 or greater in the Brisbane area in more than a year. So that makes today's earthquake especially unusual. So there were obviously no larger foreshocks either. So thousands of eyewitness accounts, first-hand accounts were collected already. These quotes just show how widely this quake was felt and how unnerving it was for many Australians. Why did this happen, guys? Australia sits far from the boundaries of the Pacific and Indo-Australian tectonic plates, but that doesn't mean it's immune to earthquakes. The Australian continent rides, so to speak, on the Indo-Australian plate. And that, unfortunately, that Indo-Australian plate is constantly colliding with other plates, with the Eurasian plate, the Pacific plate, and the Antarctic plate. So constantly there is some collision, and that builds up stress in the deep crust. So when the pressure was too high and the rocks underneath Queensland finally gave way today, that stored tectonic stress released in this earthquake suddenly. Because the rupture happened only a few kilometers underground, that's why the shaking was violent across the surface. So this is the reason why Australia sometimes experiences unexpected earthquakes that are far from plate boundaries. Usually we see this across the Pacific Ring of Fire, where there's subduction zones, plate boundaries. We have 90% of the Earth's earthquakes happening there and most of the volcanoes there. But here in Australia, it's a special situation. The plate itself is not perfectly rigid. Stress builds up in ancient fault lines that are hidden in the interior. And when these fault lines slip, we see these rare but powerful earthquakes happening. So guys, this is maybe similar to what happened recently in the New York State area in the US. It's a reminder that even in a place that's not really known for earthquake activity, the ground beneath us is never truly still or inactive. So guys, this was just a quick update. Hello to Australia. I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're all safe. Thanks for telling me about this. And right after this, I will talk more about the Tracy Arm landslide, but you should really watch this video to see what happened, and you should watch the other video that I put here about the Barry Arm landslide, because that hasn't happened yet. And if that happens, a more densely populated area is at risk. Whittier, for example, this can produce a 1,700 feet landslide. The energy released of a magnitude 7+ earthquake. Sounds crazy, guys, but it is really true. So watch these videos, subscribe if you want to support the channel, guys. Link is in in the description. You can fill me up with coffee. buymeacoffee.com/silky. Link is here. Click the join button to support the channel with a membership. You get behind the scene videos of my private life, or click the supers here. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, for sharing, for alerting me. See you soon. Click here.